Lena Grayson was already regretting packing her entire life into 2 oversized suitcases by the time she reached the train platform, sweaty, breathless, and hopelessly late. She yanked one of the bags up the steps, nearly tipping backward in the process. The suitcase caught on the edge and she stumbled. "Come on," she muttered, tugging the strap again. "Let me get that." The deep voice came from behind her, calm, confident, and way too smooth for someone wearing a hoodie and jeans. Before she could argue, the man stepped in and lifted both bags like they were filled with feathers. One in each hand. Lena blinked. Thanks. I had it." "You were about to fall off the steps," he said casually, flashing a quick, crooked smile that didn't match the quiet authority in his voice. "I figured saving you some bruises was a decent trade for getting my shoes scuffed." She looked down. His sneakers were spotless. "Right? Well, thanks, mystery man." "Isaac," he said, walking down the narrow aisle of the train with her bags as if they weighed nothing. "Isaac Granger." She followed him, annoyed by how easily he navigated the crowded car. "Lena Grayson." He looked over his shoulder. "Lena Grayson. Sounds like a lead in a novel." She rolled her eyes. "It's just a name." Isaac set the bags into the overhead rack, then turned to face her. "Still, it fits." She didn't know what that meant, and she didn't ask. The train jolted forward. She barely made it into the seat before it gained speed. Isaac slid into the one across from her like he had nowhere else to be. "You're sitting here?" she asked. He shrugged. "Train's full." She glanced around. "It wasn't. I like the view from the side," he added, nodding to the window. She narrowed her eyes. "You helped me just to sit here, didn't you?" "I helped you because you looked like you were about to break your spine carrying those things. Sitting here is a bonus." She studied him. Clean-shaven, a little too well-groomed for someone dressed that casually. His hoodie was plain, but the stitching was expensive. His watch was sleek, probably custom. She didn't know designer brands well, but something about him screamed not average. Still, she didn't have time to care. She had a new job starting tomorrow, a bank account barely breathing, and a rental studio in a city that cost more than her entire college tuition. He leaned back, watching her with a lazy sort of interest. "So, Lena Grayson, what brings you and your entire closet onto this train?" She hesitated, chewing the inside of her cheek. "New job, new city, new life. Leaving something behind?" She looked out the window. Nothing worth keeping. That quieted him, and she was grateful. She didn't want to talk about the breakup or the fact that her ex had drained their joint savings before ghosting. She didn't want to talk about the apartment she'd been evicted from last week, or the humiliating phone call she'd made to her older sister asking for a loan. "What about you?" she asked, mostly to change the subject. "Where are you headed?" He smiled like the question amused him. "Same city. Meetings. Business stuff." "What kind of business?" He paused. "Property. Investments." She raised a brow. "You're a landlord?" He laughed. "Something like that." The train sped on. For the next hour, they talked about music, about books, about how overpriced coffee was. He was easy to talk to, and Lena found herself laughing more than she had in weeks. She liked how he listened, really listened. When the train pulled into the city station, Isaac was already up, pulling her luggage down before she could stop him. "You don't have to, I know," he said, his tone low. "But I want to." She followed him off the train, the crowd buzzing around them. He carried one suitcase in each hand again, like they were weightless. "What now?" he asked, turning to her on the platform. "I catch a cab. Try not to get scammed. Find my box of an apartment." He hesitated. "I can give you a ride." She blinked. "Don't take this the wrong way, but you could be a serial killer." He laughed. "And you could be a thief luring me into a trap with your tragic luggage." She crossed her arms. "I don't get into cars with strangers." He leaned in slightly. "What if I wasn't a stranger? We just met. Then let me fix that." He handed her a small card. She stared at it. Isaac Granger. Granger Holdings. Her stomach flipped. "Wait, Granger Holdings?" she asked. The real estate company? He nodded, watching her. Like, the Granger Tower Granger? Yeah. You're the billionaire Isaac Granger? He scratched the back of his neck like it embarrassed him. Didn't think it mattered on the train? Lena's mouth went dry. She looked at his hoodie again. His watch. The way he carried himself. You helped me with my bags. You needed help. You sat across from me for hours. I liked talking to you. She stared at him. Why? He looked at her like it was obvious. Because you're different. You don't care who I am. I like that. She stepped back, overwhelmed. This is a lot. I know. He offered a smile that was surprisingly unpolished. But I meant it. I'd like to see you again. She didn't respond right away. She couldn't. But her fingers closed around the card. Lena, he said softly, I don't do this. I don't chase people down. But I'm asking you to let me take you to dinner. Or coffee. Or to yell at me for not telling you who I was. She looked up at him. His eyes weren't cold or calculating. They were warm. Honest. Dinner, she said slowly. But I picked the place. He grinned. Deal. He handed her the second suitcase and stepped back, giving her space. She watched him walk away, blending into the crowd like he wasn't one of the richest men in the country. Her heart was still racing. She boarded a train with nothing but broken plans and heavy bags. And a stranger named Isaac Granger had just turned her whole world upside down. The restaurant Lena chose was a tiny, candlelit bistro tucked away on a quiet side street, far from the luxury rooftops and velvet ropes Isaac Granger probably knew by name. She'd picked it intentionally. No linen-draped tables, no reserved signs, no valet. Just warm bread, mismatched chairs, and the smell of garlic and rosemary drifting from the kitchen. When she walked in and saw him already seated at the corner table, she almost turned around. He looked completely out of place. The dark navy coat draped over the back of his chair was clearly tailored, and the way he carried himself relaxed but alert sent a ripple through the quiet room. A woman at a nearby table did a double take. Another whispered something to her date. As Lena approached, Isaac stood and offered a small, genuine smile. I thought you might change your mind, he said. I did, she replied, pulling out the other chair. Twice. He laughed softly. Then Saturday, but you came anyway. I'm curious, she said, unfolding her napkin. That's all. I'll take it. She watched him for a moment. He was calm, but his fingers tapped once against his glass, just once, like a reflex he hadn't meant to show. You don't usually do this, do you? She asked. I don't usually meet people who don't care about my last name. Well, I care now, she said, meeting his eyes. Not because of the money. Because it means you're used to getting what you want. He tilted his head slightly. And you think that's a problem? I think it means you're not used to hearing no. The server arrived, setting down 2 menus. Isaac gestured toward hers. Order whatever you like. I trust your taste. Lena arched a brow. You don't know anything about my taste. Not yet, he said. But I'm a fast learner. She ignored the heat crawling up her neck and focused on the menu. When the server returned, she ordered a pasta dish she hadn't had since college. Isaac ordered the same. Copying me now? She asked. Learning, he corrected. Once the server left, silence stretched between them, but not uncomfortably. Lena sipped her water and studied him again. Not his face this time, but the way he sat. Restless, despite the calm exterior. Like his mind was always somewhere else. You don't like sitting still, she said. He blinked at her. Is it that obvious? You've looked at the door twice, checked your watch once, and scanned the room more than someone who's just here for dinner. He leaned back, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. You're observant. Occupational hazard, she said. I used to work reception at a law firm. You learn to read people fast. Is that what brought you to the city? No, she said, her voice dry. Desperation did. Isaac's smile faded a little. I wasn't trying to pry. I know, she said, her tone gentler. But you're not used to people pushing back, are you? He looked at her, long enough that she had to glance away. I'm not used to people seeing past the surface, he said. You do. The food arrived, breaking the tension with the clatter of plates and the sudden waft of spices. Lena took a bite, relieved to have something to do with her hands. He waited until she'd had a few more bites before speaking again. Can I ask you something? Depends. Why didn't you ask me for anything? She paused, fork in midair. What? Most people, once they find out who I am, they ask for something. A connection, a favor, a job. You didn't. She set her fork down. Because I'm not interested in what you can give me. I'm interested in whether you're worth giving a damn about. That caught him off guard. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. No one's ever said that to me, he said finally. Well, now someone has, she replied, lifting her glass. Cheers to ruining your expectations. He clinked his glass against hers, quieter this time. More thoughtful. After dinner, he paid the bill with a card that didn't have a bank logo, just a discreet embossed emblem she didn't recognize. He didn't comment on it, and neither did she. Outside, the air was sharp with wind, but Lena didn't pull her coat tighter. Isaac walked beside her, close but not too close, hands in his coat pockets. Let me drive you home, he said. I live 2 blocks from here. I'll walk you then. They reached her building in silence. It was older, red brick, and the lights in the hallway flickered when she buzzed the door. Thanks for dinner, she said, turning toward him. I meant what I said, he replied. I don't do this often. Why me? I don't know yet, he admitted. But I don't want tonight to be the last time I see you. She hesitated, keys in hand. I don't do flings. Neither do I. She met his gaze. Then don't make promises you won't keep. I won't. She turned and started up the stairs. At the top landing, she looked back. He was still standing there, watching. Good night, Isaac. Good night, Lena. She closed the door behind her, heart pounding, unsure whether it was from nerves or hope. In the quiet of her apartment, she finally let herself lean against the wall and breathe. She'd expected a dinner. What she hadn't expected was the way he'd listened, or the way he'd looked at her like she mattered. And she definitely hadn't expected to want to see him again. The rain had started just after Lena stepped out of the subway entrance, soaking through her shoes by the time she reached the glass facade of the building. She stood under the awning, brushing water from her coat, then stepped into the lobby of Granger Holdings. It was a far cry from the cramped reception desk she'd worked at last year. The floors gleamed, the ceiling stretched high above with a chandelier so intricate it looked like it belonged in a museum, and a quiet energy hummed through the space, polished, powerful, and impossible to ignore. She gave her name to the front desk, and the woman behind it nodded without hesitation. He's expecting you. Top floor. Lena exhaled slowly as she stepped into the elevator. Isaac had called that morning, his voice low, almost cautious, and asked if she'd meet him at his office. No explanations. Just the request. The elevator opened directly into a private foyer, silent and understated. A tall man in a charcoal suit led her past a set of double glass doors into an office that looked more like an art gallery than a place of business. Isaac stood near the window, sleeves rolled, tie gone, jacket draped over the back of a leather chair. The skyline stretched behind him, dramatic and endless. You came, he said, stepping forward. You asked. He looked like he hadn't slept much. There was a faint crease between his brows and a tiredness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Everything okay? She asked. No, he said, then corrected himself. Not exactly. She waited, arms crossed, not letting the silence fill the space for him. I have to leave the city, he said after a beat. Just for a few days. There's a property overseas that needs my attention. Okay, she said slowly. So why am I here? Because I want you to come with me. She blinked. You want me to leave the country with you? It's not a trap, he said quickly. I'll make sure you're back in time for work. You'd have your own room. No obligations. No expectations. I want you there. She stared at him. You flew halfway across the world for buildings. But you're asking me to tag along like I'm luggage. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He looked at her now, really looked. I don't know how to do this the right way, but I know I don't want to go without you. She dropped her arms. Why me? Because since I met you, everything feels different. I don't know how to explain it. I just know I want to keep figuring it out. Lena sat down slowly in the chair opposite his desk. You barely know me. I know you're honest when it's inconvenient. I know you don't flinch from hard truths. And I know you make me want to stop pretending I'm fine when I'm not. She let that settle between them. I'd need to pack, she said after a minute. I already had someone pick up your things from your apartment, he said. Everything's waiting on the plane. She blinked. You did what? I had your landlord let my assistant in. Don't be mad. I just didn't want to waste time if you said yes. That's not how normal people operate. I'm not trying to be normal. She stood again, unsure if she was more stunned or furious. You don't get to make decisions for me. I wasn't trying to take control, he said, stepping closer. I just didn't want to waste a chance. She studied him. He wasn't polished now, he looked restless, like someone who'd gambled big and wasn't sure if the table would turn. Where are we going? Lake Como, she exhaled. Of course we are. There's a villa under contract. I need to sign the final documents in person. Why me, Isaac? She asked again, softer now. Because I trust you not to lie to me. And because you make me feel more like myself than anyone else ever has. She stared at him. I haven't even known you a week. He nodded. I know. And you're asking me to fly across the world with you. Yes. She looked out the window. Rain streaked the glass. The city pulsed below. I want my own room. Done. I pick some of the meals. Anything you want. If I hate it, I get to leave. Say the word. She turned back to him. Fine. But no more surprises. He didn't smile. Not fully. Just nodded like something inside him had finally settled. The jet was waiting at a private terminal. She didn't ask how he'd arranged everything so fast. She didn't want to know. As they lifted into the sky, Lena stared out the window, wondering what exactly she'd just agreed to. Isaac sat beside her, reading something on a tablet, but his hand rested on the armrest between them just close enough that their fingers brushed. She didn't move away. The villa sat on a hill that overlooked the lake, all stone terraces and ivy-covered walls. The staff met them at the gate, discreet and efficient, and showed them to separate rooms on opposite wings of the estate. Her suite had a balcony, a fireplace, and a view that made her breath catch. Later, after she'd changed and wandered into the main courtyard, she found Isaac sitting alone at a table under a canopy of lights, a bottle of wine open between two glasses. You okay? She asked. He looked up. I thought you weren't coming out. Jet lag works fast. He poured her a glass. You're not overwhelmed? I'm always overwhelmed, she said, taking a seat. But I've learned how to hide it. He leaned back in his chair. You don't have to hide anything with me. I don't know if I believe that yet. You don't have to, he said. Just stay long enough to find out. She sipped the wine. It was smoother than anything she'd ever tasted. What happens after this? She asked. I don't know, but I want to figure it out with you. She looked across the table at him, the lights above them casting soft gold across his face. For the first time since the train, she didn't feel like she was falling into something out of control. She felt like she was choosing it, and that terrified her even more. The sky over Lake Como had shifted into twilight, casting long lavender shadows across the villa's stone courtyard. Lena leaned against a carved balustrade on the upper terrace, her arms folded loosely, watching the last golden streaks disappear behind the hills. The lake was quiet below, serene and endless. She hadn't seen Isaac since breakfast. He'd left early with a folder under his arm and a tension in his shoulders he hadn't tried to hide. No promises, no explanations, just a quiet, I'll be back before dinner, and a brief brush of his hand against hers as he passed by. Now, as night crept in and the lights along the shoreline flickered to life, she heard footsteps behind her. Not rushed, not hesitant, just certain. I thought you'd be inside, he said quietly. Lena didn't turn around. You said you'd be back hours ago. I know. She waited. There were complications, he continued, stepping beside her and resting his hands on the railing. The sale almost fell through. The seller tried to back out last minute. It took longer than I expected. And you didn't think to call? I didn't want to say anything until I knew how it would end. She turned then. You still don't get it, do you? It's not about the villa. You brought me here, Isaac. You asked me to be part of something. And then you disappeared. His jaw tightened slightly. I wasn't trying to shut you out. Then what were you doing? He looked out at the water. I was protecting the one thing I've never had before. She frowned. What does that mean? He drew in a breath, slow and deliberate. I've always kept control. Of my business. My image. My time. But you don't fit into a schedule or a strategy, Lena. You just showed up. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since. Her voice softened. That scares you. It terrifies me. For a long moment, the only sound was the rustle of wind through the cypress trees. I didn't come here to be impressed by your properties, she said. I came because I thought maybe you were worth knowing. Isaac turned then, facing her fully. I don't want to impress you. I want you to trust me. Then stop managing me like I'm one of your deals. A flicker of something passed through his expression, regret, maybe. Or something deeper. I've built everything I have on control, he said. But when I'm with you, I don't feel like I need it. She stepped closer, her voice quieter now. Then stopped trying to hold on so tightly. I don't know how to do that. You don't have to know, she murmured. You just have to try. Isaac's hand reached for hers, tentative at first, then firm once their fingers intertwined. I signed the papers, he said. The villa is mine, but it feels empty without you in it. You barely know me. I know enough to want more. She searched his face, the quiet vulnerability there. Not performative. Not rehearsed. Just raw, unguarded truth. I didn't expect you, she said. Neither did I. They stood there, still holding hands, the lake below catching the first stars. Later, as the evening deepened, he led her through the villa's east wing, a part she hadn't seen yet. The rooms were quiet, each lit with soft amber sconces, the decor warm and lived in. He stopped outside a set of carved wooden doors and hesitated. This was meant to be my private study, he said. But I had it changed. He pushed the doors open. Inside was a small music room. A grand piano stood beneath a vaulted ceiling, surrounded by shelves of vinyl records, a few well-worn books, and a weathered guitar leaning in the corner. A single painting hung on the wall, a watercolor of a city skyline at dusk. Not a famous one. Just personal. I used to play, he said quietly. Before the meetings. Before the boardrooms. Before everything became about numbers. She walked in slowly. Why show me this? Because I want you to see who I was before I became the version of me everyone expects. Lena looked around the room, then back at him. This is the first time I've seen you without the armor. I want to be that person with you. She reached up and touched his face, brushing her thumb along his cheek. Then stop hiding. He leaned into her touch like a man who hadn't felt something real in years. I love you, he said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rehearsed. It just was. Lena's breath caught. I think I started falling for you on that train, he continued. But I didn't know it until I saw you in that restaurant. Telling me no like you didn't care who I was. You don't make it easy. Neither do you. She laughed softly. I guess that's fair. I don't want this to be temporary. I want us to build something. Together. Lena searched his eyes. And if I say yes? What does that look like? No more walls. No more managing emotions like contracts. Just us. Trying. Failing sometimes. But trying. She stepped into his arms, her head against his chest. His heart beat steadily beneath her ear, the only sound she needed. I love you too, she whispered. He held her tighter. Not like he was afraid to lose her, but like he finally understood what it meant to have something worth holding on to. 3 weeks later, they returned to the city. Lena moved into his penthouse not because she was swept away by the marble floors or the rooftop views, but because it felt like home when he was there. On a Sunday afternoon, as sunlight poured across their kitchen, Isaac knelt on the floor beside her, a velvet box in his hand. No grand parties. No photographers, he said. Just you. And me. And this moment. She opened the box. The ring was elegant and understated, just like him when he let the world fall away. Yes, she said, eyes full. He stood and kissed her. Slow and deep. The kind of kiss that promised days and decades all at once. She'd boarded a train with nothing but heavy luggage and a heart full of bruises. Now she stood in the arms of a man who had once ruled the world alone and who had chosen, without hesitation, to share every part of it with her. Lena stepped into the gallery's sunlit atrium, her heels clicking softly against the marble as she took in the final preparations. Floral arrangements stood in tall crystal vases, their pale pink and cream petals carefully arranged to match the soft tones of the hanging artwork. The curators moved quietly around her, adjusting lighting and spacing, but the room already looked perfect. She adjusted the strap of her dress, a subtle blush silk number that Isaac had seen only once before in a dream he'd claimed the morning he'd handed it to her in a garment bag with a kiss on her shoulder and nothing else. "Everything's ready," said a voice from behind her. She turned to see Danielle, the gallery director, clipboard in hand and a wide grin on her face. "I have to admit, I didn't expect this collaboration to happen so fast." Lena smiled. "Neither did I. You're sure about the donation?" She nodded. 100%. Isaac and I agreed half the proceeds go to the housing initiative. It's already helping rebuild the shelters in the South District. Danielle's eyebrows lifted. Most couples donate a painting, not millions. Lena's smile deepened. "He's not most men." Danielle gave a small nod of approval and walked off, leaving Lena alone in the middle of the gallery. She looked up at the centerpiece, a canvas of the Lake Como skyline at dusk, painted by a local artist Isaac had discovered on their trip. It was the first piece he'd ever bought, not as an investment, but because it reminded him of their first night at the villa. He'd hung it in the penthouse for months, and now it would be sold to fund homes for families who'd never had one. She turned when she heard footsteps. Isaac approached wearing a tailored charcoal suit, his tie undone and tucked into his pocket, revealing the open collar of his shirt. His hair was brushed back but already beginning to fall into his eyes, and something about the way he looked at her made her forget the air around them was even moving. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, slipping his hand into hers. "I was making sure everything's in place. I knew it would be. You always do." She leaned her head briefly against his shoulder. "Do you think your board will complain about the donation?" "They already did. I reminded them the company is mine." She laughed softly. "That sounds about right." He turned her gently to face him. "You've changed everything." "I didn't mean to." "I know." That's why it worked. People began filing in behind them, guests dressed in sleek suits and elegant dresses, murmuring appreciatively at the artwork and displays. Waiters passed with trays of champagne, and somewhere near the back, a jazz quartet began playing soft instrumentals. But Isaac didn't look away from her. "Come with me," he said. She followed without question as he led her through a corridor lined with portraits, then into a smaller, private room at the back of the gallery. Inside, the lights were dimmer, and only one piece hung on the wall. A photograph of the train station where they'd first met. She stared at it, stunned. "Where did you get this?" "I had someone go back and capture it. The exact platform. Same day of the week. Same time." Her voice caught. "Why?" "Because that was the moment everything shifted. I didn't want to forget it." She turned toward him, emotion rising in her throat. "I wanted this to be more than a gallery opening," he continued. "I wanted it to be the start of something permanent." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a smaller box this time, not velvet, but a smooth, lacquered wood. When he opened it, the ring inside was unlike the first. It was simple. Elegant. A single diamond set between two sapphires. "I already proposed once," he said, "but this time I want to ask you something else." She blinked. "What could possibly be left?" "I want to marry you tomorrow." Her breath caught. "Tomorrow. There's nothing stopping us. The dress is already waiting. The officiant has been on standby for a week. I booked the terrace above the city sunset, just like the painting." She covered her mouth, stunned. "You planned all of that?" "I've never been more certain of anything." He stepped closer. "Let's stop waiting. Let's wake up tomorrow as husband and wife." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't shy away from them. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then cupped her face and kissed her, not rushed, not frantic, just full of everything he'd never known how to say. When they broke apart, she laughed softly, breathless and glowing. They spent the rest of the evening greeting guests, sipping champagne, and smiling through congratulations. But neither of them strayed far from the other. Every glance was electric, every brush of fingers charged with the thrill of the life they were about to begin. The next day, the sun dipped low over the city, casting a golden glow across the rooftop of the Granger Tower. The aisle was lined with white candles in glass cylinders, flickering against the twilight. A string quartet played a soft melody as Lena stepped forward, her dress floating behind her like a whisper. Isaac stood at the altar, his expression utterly unguarded for the first time in his life. "I never believed in fate," he said as he took her hands, "but then you walked onto that train with your whole life in 2 suitcases and changed mine forever." "I never believed love was something I'd recognize," she replied, her voice steady and clear, "until I looked at you and felt like I'd known you all along." The ceremony was intimate, just a few close friends, the staff who'd become family, and the city glowing around them like a blessing. When they kissed, the crowd applauded, but for Isaac, the world had narrowed to the woman in his arms and the promise she'd just made. That night, as they lay curled together in the penthouse under a tangle of cream sheets and fading candlelight, Isaac traced the ring on her finger. "Do you ever think about how different everything could have been?" he asked. "All the time," she whispered. "But I don't want different. I want this." He kissed her forehead. "Then we'll keep making this." Years later, the walls of their home were lined with art and music and photographs of the family they built, one rooted not in wealth or status or power, but in something stronger. 2 strangers had met on a train, carrying nothing but bruises and baggage. And together they created a life no one else could have imagined. One full of laughter, of purpose, of love, and they never let go.